Hello there, this is Dimitris Christou, and it's been a while. I've actually neglected my tutorial blog for Blender, and I'm pretty sorry about it. I've been very busy actually, and it's good to be back. And this time around we'll be watching an interesting tutorial about building ink text in Blender, and we'll be using surprise modifiers to do that. So let's begin. I'll hit the delete key on my keyboard while the cube here is selected, and I'll select delete, and I'll hit Shift A and add text. I'll move over to the text options, click this little F icon here, and first thing I'll do is enter my text, and then hit the tab key to type in something, and let's type in Blender. I'm hitting enter, and then rocks, and we're typing Blender rocks because, well, it's true actually. And again, I'm using the standard font, the standard Blender font. Feel free to switch the font to some else. And as I said before, I'm actually doing this because I want everybody to be able to follow this tutorial. So we got our text here, and we'll move over to the object modifiers and click add modifier, and first thing we'll add is a solidify modifier because we want our text here to have some sort of depth. I'll move over to the thickness option here, to the thickness setting, and I'll set it from 0.01 to 0.1. okay, and we got our nice thick text here. And I'm going to add another modifier, click add modifier, and what I'll do now is add a Remesh Modifier. And what the Remesh Modifier does is that it takes the object geometry and modifies it and uses some alternative geometry for our object. I'm going to click on the mode and select blocks. I'll also uncheck the remove disconnected pieces, and that makes our entire text show up. And I'll increase the octree depth from 4 up to 6. I think we're good at 6. And this modifier is also good if you want to create some 8-bit style text or objects. It works pretty nice, and I like how it looks, but it's far from looking like ink text. So what I'll do is add another modifier, and this will be a smooth modifier, and we have our modifier here in place. And what I'll do for the smooth modifier is increase the factor. Let's set it from 0.5, let's set it to 2.5. okay, and I think this looks pretty nice, and you already see that we're pretty close at our text looking like some sort of ink. And this is going to be a text we're going to be looking at somewhere up close. And what I'll do to smoothen this up, and you might guess it, is add the subdivision surface modifier. And for the subdivision surface modifier, I'll increase the view subdivisions from 1 to 2 and the render subdivisions from 2 to 3. Okay, this one looks pretty nice. We have our text in place. I'll hit Shift A and add mesh plane. I'll hit 1 on my numeric keypad for the front perspective view, and 5 on my numeric keypad again for the front ortho view. Let's zoom in a bit, and I'm going to hit Z to grab my plane and Z to move it on the Z axis, and I want it to be underneath the text, of course. Let's set it at about here, and what I'll also do is hit the S key to scale it up. Let's scale it up a lot. Okay, let's scale it up 7 times. You can see at the bottom left corner here. Alright, now I'm selecting the text again, and let's try to find a good angle in our 3D viewport. And what I'll do now is hit Ctrl Alt and 0 to roughly position my camera where I was looking the viewport before. and I think this one looks pretty nice. Let's set the location to 1.7 for the X, and for the Y let's set it to -3.3. okay, and for the Z to 2.5, and the rotation I'll bring the X rotation down a bit. I'll set it to 53. okay, and the Z rotation at the bottom to 25, and let's move a bit closer. I'm changing the X location value. okay, and let's bring the Z down a bit. I want to take a closer look at my text, and I think we're good at about there, and let's move on in a bit closer using altering the Y value for the camera position. Okay, this one looks pretty good. What I'll do now, in order to render a nice image to see my text, is change the Blender render to Cycles render, and we'll be using Cycles for this one. Let's get over with the plane. It's the easy one. I'm selecting the plane, right click to select it, and move over to the materials and click new for a new material. And we'll be using a diffuse BSDF surface, and I'll just change the color to bright bluish color at about there. okay, and I'll select the text, right mouse button click to select it, and add a new material to this one as well. And for the text we'll be using a mix shader, and we'll be using a diffuse for the first shader, and we'll bring the diffuse color down to black. We want our ink, our text, to be black. And for the second shader I'm clicking here, and I'll select a glossy shader because we want the reflections to be added to the material. What I'll do now is bring the factor down from 0.5. Let's bring it down, and we can also enable the preview to see our material. So I'm bringing the factor for the shader mixing to 0.2. let's set it to 0.15. okay, and I'll add some roughness for the diffuse BSDF shader. Let's set it to 0.1, and I think the rest of our settings are pretty nice. okay, so we have the default lamp here. I'll select it, and I'm going to click use nodes. I'll set it into sun first. It is a point lamp, and I'm going to select sun, and I'll increase the size from 0.1 to 1. We want our light source here to be bigger for the Cycles render engine. And let's take a look. I'm hitting 0 on my memory keypad to switch to camera perspective view, and I'll move over to the render settings. I'm clicking this little camera icon to move to the render settings, and let's set the sampling. I'm clicking this little triangle next to the sampling, and we have the render samples here. I'll increase them. Let's set it up from 10 to 300. And what I'll also do is change the device from CPU to GPU compute. okay, let's render an image to see how it looks, and I think it's super bright now. okay, I'm hitting the escape key. I'll move over to the lamp options and bring the emission strength from 100 down to 3, and let's render again. okay, and you can see it takes a while for the Cycles render to render the image, and you can see that it looks pretty nice. Another thing to do is I'm hitting the escape key and selecting the plane, right mouse button click to select the plane. okay, and let's bring it up by a tiny bit. I'll set it from 0.07 to 0.065, let's say, and let's render a final image to take a look. And pretty much this is it. It's a small video tutorial about creating ink style text in Blender. And the good thing about it is that not only it was easy to build, but this text is pretty flexible as well. Let's see, we have our solidify modifier, we have a Remesh modifier, a smooth modifier, and finally a subsurf modifier. And you can see our text here, it looks pretty nice. And of course you can hit the tab key and change the text to anything. Let's set it to blend bend for this blog and hit the tab key again. And as you can see, you already have a new ink style text. And let's render another image to see. And as you can see, this one looks thicker. Only thing I'll do is move over to the object modifiers, and I'll bring the thickness down from 0.1 to 0.03. Okay, and you might have now to move your plane up a bit. Okay, I have my plane here selected, and I'll hit Z and Z to grab and move it on the Z axis, and let's render again. And this one looks pretty nice as well. And as I always say, feel free to experiment, create your own text. I'll be also sharing this file and a few renders for you to see. So this is Dimitris Christou for Blend Bend, and thanks for watching.